Today our learning target is I can add and subtract decimals including negatives. Adding and subtracting decimals notes. Make sure you have a pencil and paper, or you may use your Notability to take your notes today. When adding and subtracting decimals, we can still use the T-chart. Remember that T-chart is when you have the positive numbers on the left side and you can have the negative numbers on the right side. Or you can use vice versa. It does not usually matter. So let's get started. We have two naked problem examples for adding and subtracting. Number 1, it says 4.5 plus negative 6.7. So first off, if I used the T-chart, I can label my numbers into this chart, and I know that the 4.5 is a positive number because it doesn't have that negative sign before it. So I know that the 4.5 can go on the left side. And then when I'm looking at the second number, negative 6.7, it is in parentheses and it's a plus negative 6.7. That's telling you is still a negative number. So now we have two decimals into our T-chart. We know that if we have two numbers on both sides of the T-chart, that's when we have to subtract them. And when we subtract them, we always have to put the bigger absolute value on the top and the lesser absolute value on the bottom. So when we are doing our subtraction, we need to make sure that the 6.7, because it's the highest absolute value, it's going to go on the top of the subtraction, and then the lower absolute value on the bottom. Now we can subtract these two numbers. 7 minus 5 is 2. 6 minus 4 is 2. And now we need to figure out what charge would stick with the 2.2. And we always said that the bigger number, or the bigger absolute value, is the charge that we're going to stick with. And it seems like the bigger number would be negative 6.7. And then because it was a negative, we're going to stick that negative on the 2.2. And then our final answer would be 2.2, negative 2.2. Number 2, negative 1.8 minus 3.65. So again, we're going to use our T-chart. And then we're going to start with the first number. The first number is negative 1.8. Obviously, that is a negative number. And then our second number is going to be minus 3.65. So it is extremely important that you count in that operation minus symbol, because that minus symbol also says that it would be a negative 3.65. So because it says minus 3.65, we can definitely say that is also a negative 3.65. So our negative 3.65 goes on the negative column. So now we have numbers on the same side of the T-chart. Whenever this happens, we said that we would have to add them together. So now we're going to add these two numbers together, and remember that the rule for adding and subtracting decimals, the number 1 rule would be aligning the decimal point. So just make sure that we are aligning the decimal point like that. And then you can definitely add in your zeros. Okay, so 0 plus 5 would be 5. 8 plus 6 is 14. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. So we know that it'll be 5.45. So now we have to figure out what charge would be stuck with that. We know that we were working with the negative side. So if you're adding a negative and a negative together, we know that would be a negative. So that is our final answer, negative 5.45. All right, so moving on to word problems on adding and subtracting decimals. Number 3, one scuba diver is 2.4 feet below sea level. There is a stingray 6.8 feet below sea level. how far apart are the scuba diver and the stingray? So let's highlight some key words or numbers. It says that the scuba diver was at 2.4 feet below sea level. And then there's a stingray at 6.8 feet below sea level. So if we know that it's below sea level, that tells excuse me, that tells you that it's going to be under the sea and our numbers are going to be negative. So for example, if we had the ocean and then we had the scuba diver, he was at negative 2.4 feet, whereas the stingray was at negative 6.8 feet, which is below sea level. And now we're seeing how far apart they are. So a nice little picture should help us a little bit in elaborating what this word problem is telling you. So now we can figure this out by finding the difference, because when it says how far apart, that's the same thing as saying what is the difference. And when we say difference, a lot of students say that means subtracting. So we are going to subtract. So now if we subtract, we definitely need to begin with our t-chart again. And then we need to figure out where those two numbers are. So now, if we set this expression up, we know that we're going to say, okay, so negative 2.4 minus negative 6.8, where would these two numbers go on our t-chart? So first off, I know that negative 2.4 is going to go on the negative side, because that negative symbol just tells us it's flat out negative. And then minus negative 6.8. So this can be a little tricky, but if you see how it's set up, you can tell that it kind of looks like a plus sign. So you can also you can use this little tip for when you see a minus negative with parentheses, but if you don't have that minus negative, you can also say that a minus and a minus becomes a positive, telling you that minus negative can become a plus sign. So it becomes positive or the plus sign. So this actually is going to make this a positive number. So instead of making it minus negative 6.8, because those are two subtraction symbols together like that, we can change it to a positive, making 6.8 a positive number. So that is how we set up the t-chart. And now we can finally do our operational part. And I'm going to do my work on the side right here. So if we have two numbers that are on either side or on both sides of the t-chart, we know that we are subtracting. So I'm going to subtract the bigger absolute value, 6.8, minus the smaller absolute value, 2.4, and just come down, and it's already aligned. 8 minus 4 is 4, 6 minus 2 is 4, and then your decimal point comes straight down. And now we know that the biggest absolute value is 6.8, and we saw that it was a positive, so our answer should also end up positive, and we know that's going to be 4.4 feet, and that's how far apart they are, 4.4 feet apart. All right, number 4, Lee overdrew his account by $9.20. Then he deposited $14.62 to the same account. What is his new balance? So let's highlight some keywords. It says he overdrew. Remember that this vocabulary term means he overdrew his account, meaning he went over what he already had in his account. So it's saying if he had $0 on his account and he overdrew $9.20, what does this number become? It becomes a negative because it's overdrawn. Then he deposited, that's another keyword, and that means putting in money to the account. So that's going to add in money to his account. And the amount he did that was $14.62. Now we're looking for his new balance. So let's think about this. If we already know that he started off with negative $9.20 and then he added the $14.62, our expression should look like this. Negative $9.20 plus $14.62. And then we can start by setting up our t-chart. Negative 9.20 would be on the right side. 14.62 would be on the left side. And then we can start figuring out what operation we're going to use. We know that the two numbers are on both sides, so we would have to subtract them. And I know that the bigger absolute value would be the $14.62. So that would go on the top of our operation. And then 9.20 would be the lower absolute value. That would go on the bottom. Remember, we always have to align the decimal point. So now we can start our subtraction. 2 minus 0 is 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 9, we need to borrow and make it 14 minus 9, that's 5. So our final answer would be 5.42, but we would have to figure out what would be the charge of it. And we see that 14.62 is the bigger absolute value, and it's the positive side. So our final answer would be $5.42. And that is what his new, or what Lee's new balance would be. All right, that concludes our notes for today on adding and subtracting decimals, including negatives. Hopefully we accomplished this learning target. Remember that we have an integers and decimals test next Wednesday. We will have review days and practices, so do not worry if you are still struggling with decimals.